Good morning. As a young man in college, majoring in history and economics, in 1964, Brooks Smith participated in the Mississippi Freedom Summer Project. He has said that that experience redirected him towards the ministry. He received a Bachelor of Divinity degree from Colgate Rochester Divinity School in 1970 and was ordained as a Presbyterian minister in 1971. He received a master's degree from the University of Chicago Divinity School, and in 1995, Brooks received a Master of Science degree from the New School University in nonprofit management. He's been the spiritual leader of Presbyterian churches in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey for more than 36 years. His leadership included mission trips to Latin America, the creation of a housing program, and a refugee center. Retiring from senior ministry duties in 2007, Brooks continues to serve with the Northeast New Jersey Presbytery and is currently chair of the Disaster Preparedness and Response Commission and the Grants Committee. His most recent passion, however, has been informing and encouraging mindful charitable giving, which brings him to us today. Please welcome the podium, Reverend Brooks Smith.
Yeah, it's a joy to be here. I spoke to this group maybe 30 years ago or something like that, in the time when Liz and I went to Nicaragua together. And on that Nicaraguan trip, we had arranged funding for, and were involved in building the first center for alcoholics, for rehab purposes, that was open to everybody, regardless of politics, open to men and women, in a very impoverished country that was coming out of the Civil War of the 80s. And it was really a great, marvelous thing. We just were at the early stages of construction, but eventually it got opened. So especially those of you who know 12-step programs, it's a pretty dramatic situation to have an opportunity to have an institution that would, of course, the program was 3 days of detox and then 40 days, and it was like work, meeting, work, meeting, work, meeting. And the deal also too was that if you left, you could never come back. So I'm interested in strategic philanthropy because for a whole variety of reasons, one of which is on one return trip from Nicaragua, I was talking to a friend of mine who was a lawyer and had been a municipal court judge and owned his business, and was a church person, not sort of super active, but kind of a go-to-mass guy. And I realized in talking to him that he had absolutely no sense at all of giving or of philanthropy as something to do with a plan. I mean, giving was, they pass the plate, and depending on your mood, you put in $5 or $20 or whatever. And, if somebody asks, then you give and you respond. And it's sort of like, geez, Mark, you're a really smart guy. And you spend a lot of time going to school and developing skills to earn a living. And you're coming up on retirement, and you've probably got a financial planner to help and you're using their expertise and their wisdom to invest money. Don't you want to think about and strategize and ponder how to give money out of yourself as opposed to just being reactive? I don't know, I hope I'm sort of speaking to you, that it's a whole lot more fun and it's a lot more faithful if we have a plan and we have a strategy and we're giving out of our values and who we are, rather than just because somebody asks. Now, my guess would be that all of us are involved in different ways in asking for money. I'm not against that. I raise money for a variety of causes. But that's a whole other discussion. We're not here as the stewardship committee or as the 50th anniversary committee for our college reunion to talk about how to give a special gift to our university or any of that sort of stuff. It's all about our values, who we are, our priorities, and then letting it flow, letting it flow. Our granddaughter, my son moved his family to Nicaragua. He'd been a volunteer there for 4 years. And he moved his family there when our granddaughter was 3. And so I went to visit, and they had an above-ground pool in the back. And so she says, Pops, come on and swim. So swimming around in the above-ground pool, and there's a ladder so the kids can't get in, that removable. And she says, Pops, come into my house. And she's sort of hiding under the ladder. And so I, sort of swim over, and we're in the house together. And she says, well, Pops, would you like a lollipop? Oh, yes, Samia, thank you so much. I love a lollipop. That's so good. Pops, you've got to take the wrapper off before you eat the lollipop. So I trust that some of what we're talking about will be sort of like, oh, well, that's obvious. But at any rate, we'll take the wrapper off. So it's real to us. So why do we give? Why do we give? Maybe we'll put up our little summary here. The sheet that you've got is sort of your take-home prize, is just a summary of where we're going to go. And I'm not going to go through it. We're going to go through it gradually and touch on most of what's there. But the first question is, what are our passions? What are our passions? We're not just going to give, well, again, if you're committed to strategic philanthropy, if you're saying, I really want to be wise as serpents, innocent as doves, I want to be effective. And I want to be effective in the context of my values and not just responding to the values of others. We need to know our passions. We need to think about who our partners are. And then once we got that figured out, we've got to figure out what our process is. There's a variety of ways to be philanthropic. What the specific projects are, you've got a partner, you've got somebody you trust, but in my case, and in Liz's case, when we were building this treatment center for alcoholics, it was like because I knew the mayor of the town of San Marcos, who himself was an AA guy, and who therefore had deep compassion for other people who were struggling with alcoholism in a society like that, a poor society. And then, we won't talk about this too much, but, we need to reflect on our giving. People check out your investments, right? Or you have somebody check it out for you and say, maybe more of this, less of that, risk, reward, all that kind of stuff. So there's a reflection process, there's a studying process, and then we need to party and celebrate the good work we do there. So, our motives. Sometimes we give out of pain. Allison Henkel actually was maybe on that trip with Liz and I. Anyway, her name is Allison Henkel, and her son, she had twins. She and her husband had twin children. The daughter was perfectly normal, and the son had a disease called spinal muscular atrophy. Maybe a few of the medical types would know what that is, but it's an obscure disease. It's not well known. It doesn't impact a lot of people, and therefore it gets called kind of an orphan disease, right? And so, yes, she loves and cares for her child who's in a wheelchair most all of his life before he dies at age 12. And she says, because of my experience and my reality, I have a deep passion and compassion for other families where this disease is going to burden them and then eventually take the life of their child. Now, sometimes, what do? We just get depressed and say, give me another drink. But Allison said, I'm going to find other people who have other families and supporters and who care about this and this disease, and we'll be part of a national team. There's the Pennsylvania team first off, and then the national team, and we will work together to raise money, to raise awareness of this disease, and we'll fight back. And so she took her pain, and she said, I'm going to be passionate about this, and I'm going to be strategic in my philanthropy personally, and also in my energies to organize around it. So pain is one of the things that certainly calls us. Love and hope. We have a vision. We have a vision for whatever. Just in a minute, I'm going to ask each of you just to think for a minute about your passion, your deep passion. But maybe it's for living in a community where there aren't homeless people, where there's adequate low-income housing. Again, this friend of mine, alcoholism. So he'd been through it himself. So logically, powerfully, he had passion, and he had the resources to do something with that to help other people. And faith. It's a little, to me, it's frightfully embarrassing as a Christian type, the way in which people don't begin to listen to what the gospel says about money and about sharing. We had a workshop on how to be a faithful philanthropist when you're not Bill Gates. And we had an imam, Ali Shadri, who's an economist by training and also an imam, talk about Islam and zakat in particular, and how part of zakat is to take an analysis of what you earned that year and share it. And what was different for me was to share it especially with people you know in your community. And Donna Katzen, who I'll come back to in a minute, Jewish, talked about Maimonides in particular and the Jewish tradition of philanthropy and healing the world. And then I spoke briefly about Zacchaeus, this story about a guy who said, you know what? I've gotten an awful lot of benefit out of life in this world. I have a lot of resources. And by God, by the grace of God, I'm going to share them. So, you know, maybe it's pain for us, a particular place of woundedness. Maybe it's hope. Maybe it's gratitude. You know, a lot of us put money in our wills, especially for universities. You know, if a university gave you a scholarship and it helped change your life, then you've got a certain passion and compassion and sense of, wow, I hope other people's lives are changed. Princeton University has a huge endowment and has the largest percentage of alumni giving to the university, partly because at freshman orientation, they solicit the students to donate to the university. They say, you know what? Whatever the percentage is, 2/3 of you are here on scholarship with some kind of scholarship because other alumni, others have contributed to your education. Be grateful. Be grateful. And yes, we anticipate that you probably are not going to be donating $100,000 to Princeton this year as a 19-year-old, but donate 100. And if you donate 100 when you're 19, then you may well have the capacity to donate 100,000 when you're 60 or 70 or 80, right? So those are the factors that kind of help shape our passions. I'd like you to just think for a minute about one area. You know, of course, we care about a lot of things. There's so many issues. We care about a lot of things, but we need to be focused on the one or two where we really are committed, right? Allison Henkel, her deep passion, her being on the board, her like almost daily job, if you will, of advocating for this cause. So just think for a minute, what is one passion that is yours? One passion that is yours. And if you would just turn to a neighbor and just tell them what it is. Please do that right now. Little group process. Tell your neighbor what one of your passions is. Please. All right, and thank you. How many of you serve on boards of organizations? How many of you serve on boards? Of course, there's different kinds of serving on boards. There's the board that meets every quarter and you show up and, right? And then there's the board that meets monthly and you're really sort of thrown. How many of you volunteer for organizations besides the old guard? Right, so we're into this. We're committed to various kind of causes. One of the great dangers is to be overcommitted, or undercommitted and overextended, right? To care a little bit about a lot of different things and to not end up really making an impact in any one place. So a strategic philanthropy would say, sure, you're going to give something to here, something to here, something to here, but where are you going to really bring the heavy artillery, so to speak, really weigh in and say, this is my cause for this moment, for this period of time. One of the challenges is, especially with international organizations. So a friend of mine she wasn't a wealthy person. She worked in an office job for AT&T for years and years, but she lived very frugally because she wanted to be very generous. And she had a passion about Native Americans. She found an organization. She worked with this organization for a while. She donated. She was in correspondence. And she said, please send me, this is before you just got to get on the internet and find everybody's 990 tax return. Please send me a financial report. This is a number of years ago. Please send me a financial report. And they didn't send it to her. So what did she do? Adios, adios amigos. And she found an organization called First Nations. Now, she's not Native American. It's just something that has come to her out of her faith and consciousness. And she found an organization called First Nations. And she called up the director of First Nations and said, I'm really interested in what you're doing. Tell me about it. And she developed a relationship with the director of First Nations. And she became a significant donor to First Nations. And she loved what she saw, and there was this interplay, and she started baking cookies for their board meetings and stuff and shipping them off because she loved to bake. And they said, hey, Gail, why don't you come to our annual meeting in Los Angeles? And so she shows up at the annual meeting realizing that she's the only non-Native American at this annual meeting. So she had a passion, and to some extent about an organization in the States. And it's a little easier in the States, right? Because you can kick the tires of the organization a little easier. Or if it's in the area, you can just kind of go drop in. If you're considering making a significant investment in the cause, whatever that cause is, yeah, of course you go and check them out. Maybe announced, maybe unannounced. You just want to see the whites of their eyes. You want to know who the director is, who the staff people are, who else really cares about this cause. But internationally is a little more difficult. Language is a problem often, culture is a problem. I was involved with what was called Presbyterian Disaster Assistance, which was the national agency of the Presbyterian Church that responded to disasters. And I was on the national committee for a time, and we were during the time of the Haiti earthquake. You remember, this is about 12 years ago or something like that. And we're sitting around, so this is on the complications of international giving. We're sitting around, and they said, we made a donation, the staff said, we're going to make a major donation to 2 organizations in Léogâne, which was the epicenter of the earthquake. And one is an Episcopal school, and the other is the hospital that the Presbyterian Church helped build years and years ago. Now, I, in my wisdom, said, well, that's ridiculous. You're supporting this private Episcopal school for wealthy kids in Haiti versus the hospital. Of course we should invest in the hospital. How many of you would agree with me? Thank you, at least one person. All right, the rest of you. So we go to, but I decided, there's something, I better go, let's go to Haiti. Let's go check this out in person. So we go to Haiti, we stay in Léogâne, and we find out that the hospital had been closed before the earthquake. Why had it closed? I mean, there's certainly medical needs in Haiti. Well, it closed because the director hired his cousin to be the head of maintenance, and his cousin hired his cousin, and hired his cousin, and hired his cousin, and there were more people working in maintenance than working in the medical side. Besides that, it's not all that far from Port-au-Prince. So, yeah, the hospital went bankrupt. Go over to the Episcopal School. Episcopal School has got serious damage, and church-related schools in countries like Haiti are often the only really viable education. I mean, the public schools often have no electricity, no lights, and barely have teachers. So it's like, Brooks, you're an idiot. You know? So I'm just pointing out to you some of the challenges of international giving, international funding, where things don't quite look exactly like what you think they would be. And what would make sense maybe if we're making decisions in Summit or in Providence about priorities. Are you going to give to a public health clinic or to a private school to help recovery? Well, easy answer, but not so easy in Haiti. Different answer in Haiti. So one of the things about international then is to find other people who know something about it. If that's your passion, you say, my passion really is preventing domestic violence around the world. And sure, I mean, we know how to not know how to deal with it, but I mean, we know organizations here that are doing that. But how do you find an organization if you say, yeah, but what about like Kenya? How do I find an organization in Kenya? Well, it can be done. You can find organizations here. There's actually a group called the Segal Family Foundation that works in Kenya, who have professional staff people who can do the research and tell you, hey, you want the best organization dealing with domestic violence in Nairobi? Here it is. Here's the name of the organization. You go check it out yourself. So we can do these things if we're motivated, if we say, oh, I'm called, I'm convicted, this is really a responsibility. Now, years ago, I worked for the Resource Foundation, it was called, and we raised money for about 30 organizations in Latin America, from individuals, foundations, and corporations. And I got sent to Ecuador, and we were raising money to build houses in Ecuador with a group called Hogar de Cristo. And I remember at the time giving speeches, talking to various places, at church groups and Rotary groups and whatnot. And somebody would say, well, listen, what's this about housing in Ecuador? Why not, hey, there's housing needs here. I said, absolutely, there's housing needs here. My church was involved with the Catholic Church in founding a small housing corporation in North Plainfield, and we were instrumental in helping create the Plainfield Area Habitat for Humanity. There are housing needs here, absolutely. And in 1984, when we built a complex of low-income housing in North Plainfield, we needed about $25,000 a unit to make the units affordable. Now I'm talking to you today about Hogar de Cristo in Ecuador, and yes, the house is not the same. It's a very basic minimal house, but we're building houses for $500. That's worth thinking about. So ideas though, how do we give? Well, you can write a check. You can give money directly to somebody. And I realize that there's a little bit of resistance among us to that. There's sort of the Emersonian self-reliance. Everybody should take care of themselves. A friend of mine named Terry Leary, I guess we'll show a couple of slides in just a minute. So Terry Leary is in Granada, Nicaragua. She owns 3 properties with her sister. They went there 15 years ago and bought and built this incredibly wonderful small hotel, boutique hotel. Terry Leary, what did you do before you retired? Well, I worked for USAID and the Peace Corps mostly. I worked in Sierra Leone, Chad, Bosnia, Ukraine, Afghanistan, Pakistan, in redevelopment after war situations. Okay, Terry Leary, you know something about international development. Terry Leary becomes friends with a guy named Jesse Romero. Jesse Romero came to this country illegally, brought by his mother when he was 14 years old, murdered a guy when he was 17. He's a drug addict. He's a Los Angeles drug addict. Murders a guy when he was 17, 5 years in Folsom Prison, deported back to Nicaragua. Only skill really is English, Spanish. Is a translator it's one of the things he does. Ends up translating for this group, this missionary group who wants to work who works among the families who are garbage pickers. Anybody ever been to a garbage, Latin American garbage dump outside the city? Don't go. Or maybe go, but go prepared. So Jesse Romero and Terry Leary kind of get in contact with each other, and Terry says, one of my passions is these people who survive off of the garbage from the city of Granada. Granada is one of the tourist centers, and it's a really cool city in Nicaragua. She calls me up and says, hey, I've got a model of a house that we could build for $750. It's incredible because we're going to build zinc walls, 12 by 12, and then after we build the walls, we'll pour the foundation. So it's sealed at the bottom, so your friendly local scorpions and poisonous snakes can't get into the house. It's a roof, it's a lock, and it's a floor. She said, we can build these for $750. I'd like to build 10. And I said, well, Terry, look, if you're going to try to build 10, why don't you try to build 50? If you have a 50% success rate and you try for 50, then you got 25. She says, well, would you help? Yeah, I'll help you. So here's what she built. Joel's got a few of the slides of. This is just to give you a little feel for the reality. These are people whose life is, so this is the community of people whose life is scavenging, mostly scavengers at the dump. Just go on from one to the other quickly, because I gotta do one. So this is the side of the house. Now you say, why in the world would you paint it pink? Well, by painting it, it improves the life of the zinc, and so it's like whatever color we can get of donated paint. That's the color of your house. 12 by 12. Again, a family. The other tragic issue, of course, is many people are illiterate in Spanish. So, but one of the transformations was that people, instead of having the kids stay at the house all the time, right? Because imagine all you have is protected by this little ramshackle shack. You got to have somebody watch your stuff. You don't have much stuff. Poor people are there's a lot of thieves among poor people, just like there are a lot of thieves among rich people. So you got to have one of your kids stay there all day. So now the kids can go to school instead of garden stuff. And also, in the rainy season, it's just mud, so you're living in mud. So we'll just go quick through. I just give you a little feel for some of the people. This woman was blind since birth, was raped as a child. That's her son. So now she has a house. Again, not fancy, 12 by 12, but it's a roof, it's a lock, and it's a door. That's good. We'll just do that. So let me just share with you one idea that I've kind of gotten excited about. You could create a foundation. Forget Bill Gates. Yeah, Bill Gates decided, okay, I don't want my tombstone to say he died rich. Sort of back to the Andrew Carnegie said the same kind of thing, right? That he who dies rich dies disgraced. Jesus said the same thing, but anyway. So my wife and I have wrestled with this a bit. As you think about your will, sure, we want to take care of our kids, even though sometimes that's a bit weird. And, you know, but leave that aside, that whole discussion about how we do that in such a way that they're motivated and not just decide that they'll sit on a trust fund kind of thing or abuse it. Some tough issues there. Forget that. That's a great joke about the therapist, about, you know, the light bulb that needs to change. But, okay, so then some of what we're going to leave in our estate, we're going to leave for charitable purposes. So what my wife and I are going to do is the secondary beneficiary, right, so is our charitable trust. How many of you have a charitable trust? Oh, no. That's scary. Well, a charitable trust is a way in which, of course, you can, if you have a high income year, you can take the tax deduction that year and then disperse your monies over a period of time. Now, I'm really scared now. How many of you donate out of your required minimum distributions? Better. Those of you who are in organizations, though, please keep spreading the word about that. I talked to a wonderful mission-oriented 74-year-old ex-social worker, and I said, Sharon, you know, you're using your charitable trust, right? Your required minimum distributions to make your contributions to the church and other places, aren't you? Huh? What's that? What's that? So I think in our capacity as educators of our fellow folks who do care, who have mission commitments. You know, we got our World Wildlife postcard, and they specifically say it's all about just charitable, using your qualified charitable distribution. So, you know, if I could urge you to be a missionary, or, you know, proclaim the importance of using charitable trust, the qualified charitable, your RMD. But so anyway, the charitable trust is a mechanism where you get your tax deduction, and then the monies can be distributed over a period of time. What we're going to do is we have in our if my wife and I were to die tomorrow or today, there's one person who's got to be named as the trustee, if you will, the controller of the charitable trust, who decides how the money is distributed. But we have a letter to that one person who we trust completely to say, we'd like you to consult with my brother-in-law, with 3 other people. There's one person who knows Nicaragua well in Central America. I trust him, whatever judgments he makes in 20 years when I'm not here, they'll be good judgments. There's one friend of mine who knows Plainfield, Elizabeth, kind of the struggles of communities here. I trust him completely, whatever he knows. So basically, you find your friends who are experts in what you care about, who know a lot about what you care about, and you say to them, listen, you all get together and decide how to do this. Now, of course, it's a whole lot better to give the money away in your lifetime. It's a lot more fun. It's a lot more fun. I'm going to be 80 next week. I don't know, hopefully I'll have 10 years. But you know, my wife and I would keep talking about this. It's like, you know what? If we have in our will the capacity to give away, let's say, $100,000, and we're going to put it in our will, well, why not do $10,000 a year? Or if we have the capacity to put $1 million in our will, what are we waiting for? What are we waiting for? And also, why just have somebody else make those decisions down the road? Now, I think my idea about this charitable trust thing is pretty good, pretty clever, but still, I'm going to try best I can to give it away here and now. And it's not that we want applause or whatnot. You just want the fun of seeing the whites of their eyes. Seeing the whites of their eyes. With a group of people, we built actually some Christchurch people, some Central Press people. We had a program to build housing in Ecuador, $500. We raised $75,000, so we funded building 150 houses, and we actually went and physically built 20. And then we threw a party for everybody, all the families that we'd worked with for a week, and you know, their kids, and they'd already put their goats underneath the houses and their chickens and whatnot. It was organized chaos. It was glorious. But that's about the thing, having a party. And you know, if other people aren't going to throw it for you, throw it for yourself. Just sort of celebrating your strategic philanthropy and the good you do. So let me just, one thing is, we'll send a follow-up notice because we're going to do a workshop in September on the 13th, Saturday the 13th, titled, How to Be an International Philanthropist When You're Not Bill Gates. And a friend of mine who was the founder and CEO for 30 years of Shared Interests, which was the largest US-based organization doing microfinance in Southern Africa. Recently, she's recognized by the South African government for her work. Anyway, so she's got to be our facilitator. So microfinance, international development, international banking, and intercultural relations, right? How you work some of that through is going to be part of our topic on September 13th. But here's the poem. Whatever is foreseen in joy must be lived out from day to day. Vision held open in the dark by our 10,000 days of work. Harvest will fill the barn. For that, the hand must ache, the face must sweat. And yet no leaf or grain is filled by work of ours. The field is tilled and left to grace, that we may reap. Great work is done while we're asleep. And when we work well, a Sabbath mood rests on our day and finds it good. So may we all work well as strategic philanthropists. Amen. Okay, but questions? Yeah, questions.
Okay, we're open for questions. Well, while they're thinking about their questions, I have to say that your talk was very inspiring to the point that I think I will go and do something. It may not be.
Amen.
It may not be big. It may just be, you know, a qualified charitable part of my RMD, which I still have to do later this year. So I thank you for the inspiration.
Beats paying 24% tax on your RMD. Right? Yes.
Hey, we have a question right here.
Hi.
Hi, Dave.
Thank you for your speech, presentation. It did make me realize that I'm not very strategic about my charitable giving. You had mentioned a charitable trust.
Right.
Could you just give a little bit more information on that?
I can repeat you. So the question was just about a charitable trust. Well, Schwab, Fidelity, all the major brokerage firms have charitable trusts. So a charitable trust is you could take appreciated securities, which is one handy dandy thing, and save the capital gains on it, and you donate it into your charitable trust, right? You get the tax deduction. So you got a securities worth $10,000. You donate them, you get the tax deduction that year. So especially if people have situations in which they're selling a piece of property, they're going to have big tax burdens, makes a whole lot of sense to have a charitable trust to counterbalance that tax burden and put it in, and then you can distribute it at your leisure. Not at your leisure, with your strategy fully in hand, with your passions. But also then, as I said, you can, in your will, in your estate planning, the other thing that's great about a charitable trust is, you know, if you change your mind in your will, you're going to leave whatever, some amount of money to your synagogue, let's say, or your university, you got to go change your will. If you change your mind, say, that university or that person or that organization, I don't like them anymore. If you've got it in your charitable trust, you go in, boom, boom, boom. You just click it and change it. Doesn't cost you anything. So charitable trust, we found it for 15 years, an extremely helpful vehicle for, and also they track everything, for managing our charitable giving. And again, populating it with appreciated securities or whatnot is tax smart.
Thank you. That was helpful. I have a donor-advised fund.
It's the same thing.
So it's similar, but I don't, in the fund, I haven't created sort of a framework for, I mean, I do make grants out of it, but I don't have that kind of
No, it's the same
directional.
thing.
It is.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it's language issue. Donor advised fund is the same thing as a charitable trust. So it's just the naming of it. So yeah, again, I think it's an extremely useful vehicle. And as I say, I've just sort of struggled my way into this idea of using our charitable trust as part of our estate plan and populating it with, basically our IRAs if we were to die soon. But the better idea that my wife and I struggle with, and I think is, again, like partners, obviously those of us who are in marriages or whatever, your spouse hopefully is your partner in these kind of discussions. And so people have different values and different urgencies. And I think the other thing is that some of us, as we retire, we thought, the whole idea of us poor retired people on fixed incomes. Well, often if you've not had to bear heavy burdens with your children's expenses, you find yourself in a situation where you have more resources than you thought you would. So the challenge of giving at a higher level is in our face, kind of thing. But I think, again, not to wait for somebody to say, we're going to have a capital campaign, won't you give? But rather to say, what do I care deeply about? And how can I find the people, the organizations and the people that really can make that passion into a reality and change people's lives, save people's lives, transform people's lives. Other questions? Yeah.
Let me just ask a follow-up to that. So if you want to set up a charitable trust, are there magic words that you should be using with whatever institution would be holding it, like charitable trust? And how does it work for that to succeed you if you pass away while there's still money in that?
Yeah. No, there's no magic words. Charitable trust, donor advised fund. Actually, donor advised fund is the more common sort of generic word. I mean, Fidelity happens to use the word charitable trust. Either word will get you to the place that you want to go. You have to have a person designated to allocate those funds should you die, or on the case, not should you die, I guess we are going to die. Oh, that's a bummer. Yeah. So you have some person that you designate to make the decisions upon your death, and then that's how it works.
Thank you for a great talk. One of the things I'd like to know is, are you familiar with Charity? Okay, are you familiar with Charity Navigator?
Sure. Yeah.
Would you like to discuss that? Because I think it's been a very good resource for me in terms of choosing worthwhile charities when I'm not familiar with who's actually getting the funds dispersed in the correct fashion.
Absolutely. Yeah, so, I mean, I mentioned the 990. So Charity Navigator is one of those resources that's basically free. I mean, you just get online and you say, tell me about this organization. What they do is they analyze the tax returns, and tax returns of nonprofit organizations are public information. So again, my friend who, 15 years ago or something, didn't get the financial reports from the one organization and changed her priorities or her commitment, was in one situation. Now all that stuff is readily available with a little research. But Charity Navigator then says, okay, we've analyzed the tax return, and this organization meets a variety of criteria. A lot of them are administrative, not just financial, but certainly it's a resource to get very good information about organizations here. I still would recommend, though, especially if it's local, that you go kick the tires, you go talk to, see the volunteers, get a feel for it more intimately. Internationally, there's similar organizations, but that's more difficult. So if you want to do, housing in Kenya, then you probably are well advised to try to find somebody who knows Kenya, not just doing it online, not just doing it by, a website information, but some people who know the organization.
We have a question online. Phil Aprazizi, unmute and ask your question.
Yes, thanks so much for your talk. I appreciate it. One additional use I've used for my donor advised fund when setting it up was to involve my daughter, who's going to take over my family foundation at some point in the future, like you said, and give her a sense for what this is all about just by having the responsibility, advising her in advance of the responsibility. It's very simple to set up those donor advised funds, and it gives you the opportunity to do long and short-term asset management for that, as well as QCD. So I heartily recommend that as an excellent first step for anybody.
No, absolutely. And I think that's the other kind of interesting issue is how do we, sort of share with our family our own philanthropic values and, get them to be philanthropic, I guess, get them to be generous. Sometimes we've done this with our children occasionally, not consistently, but is to say, listen, we'll donate $1,000 to a cause that you care about. So you pick the cause and we'll donate it to it, out of our charitable trust. But if you have a trusted daughter who's going to, be the manager of your trust when you pass on, beautiful, yeah. And again, I think to kind of, if you've got international partners or local partners, is to go visit, to go be involved. The annual fundraising dinner is one kind of thing, but the parties in the park, like the picnics, are really a better and more joyous kind of ways of celebrating. The refugee center I work with in Plainfield, last few years, we've had a big backpack distribution before the kids go back to school. And it's sort of like a street fair. I mean, there's, like 200 people, and all these kids running around, and, hot dogs and games and whatnot. So that's a very gratifying kind of way to experience. So ways in which you can, if you're on a board, you bring your daughter to the board meetings, you go and, hang out with the kids if it's a youth serving agency. Absolutely, wonderful thing to do. Yeah, I think we need to share our values. Share our values with one another. It's kind of amazing that we don't talk about this stuff very much, because it's pretty important. It's life and death. So.
Thank you, Brooks. It was great. As Rich said, I think there'll be some changes coming out of this meeting amongst this group. It was very thought-provoking, and I appreciate it. We have a tradition, to thank you for attending and giving us this great information. There are two ways of thanking you, and one of them is a certificate of appreciation from the Old Guard. And I actually brushed up on the history a little bit. Old Guard, and well, Summit, New Jersey, was the orchid capital of the country back in the 1930s. It was recognized as such, and it was really a center of commercial orchid growing and distribution. And for that reason, we have on our certificate of appreciation an orchid. So we've been around for a long time, and we really appreciate what you're getting. Well, thank you. And the second way we thank you is the Old Guard salute. Yeah, beautiful. I think it's very